Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Pat Connelly, and I'd like to welcome you here to the conference. We all have had a great deal of enjoyment over the last years preparing what we think will be advantageous to you. Now, I come from the business community, 40 years in credit risk management, different industries, different kinds of companies, building credit organizations from scratch, and taking them to the next level. So you have an opportunity when you've done many mergers and acquisitions and you've done that process with other companies that become part of your companies. You pick up a lot of trends, a lot of practices over the years in university teaching. I taught at the graduate school and the undergraduate school, international business management, financial management. You learn that you can adapt and integrate operational features of trade into the education program. They, in turn, their students convey it to the field. It gives them competitive advantage. If you're looking for a job and you can actually discuss intelligently what the job ordinarily consists of, your probability of being hired is very good. The flip side of that is what I used to go through, and I would hire an MBA candidate and spend 6 months teaching him how business operates, which is very destructive to your feeling of support for hiring outside of your company. And by the way, that's good news, because that means there are opportunities for each and every one of you to engage, acquire knowledge and experience, and move forward in your company if they recognize your value, beyond your company if they don't. So the only asset that you can acquire while working for a company and walk with it intact is the knowledge component and the experience that you manage to position on top of that knowledge. So what we're doing today is we're aggregating two things together. Practices that have been identified as best, if that's how you choose to qualify it, acceptable and operative when you implement them in the marketplace. So human capital is singularly the most important factor that a business has in its arsenal of skills. So your people are your company. To the extent they are well-trained, they are well-founded in the jobs that you have chosen to designate as their responsibility, with decent management and good leadership, you will be a successful company, because your people will be able to anticipate the issues that would cause you to lose your competitive advantage. And today is about looking at individuals, to some degree, fundamental group orientation, what that structure means to you and how it can support you or it can destroy you in your endeavor to grow a high-performing group within an enterprise that has competitive advantage. Okay, to the extent we do these things, you will continuously add competitive advantage. You'll prevail in the industry. Having said that, you can all go home now. Realistically, you need to understand something very clearly. Credit in the past has been a no-respect position within an enterprise. Back office, green eye shades, order prevention department. It's even as recent as 10 years ago in Europe, in the US, in Latin America, you would consistently hear the complaints that credit exists to assure that salespeople do not make their compensation objectives. And on that basis, we tried to move forward and do a job of analyzing clients to make sure we have a decent portfolio of customers, and prevailing over incredible odds and lack of communication, drive those customers to buy more product in a more efficient way while giving you some kind of margin so you can run your business. Well, today, folks, the World Bank has already identified the fact that upwards of 90% of all trade occurs using some aspect of credit. 90%. So you have a career if you choose to engage and develop it. We're going to talk today about the human capital aspect primarily because you cannot grow a business without first having developed the functionality that supports the business and its strategy, and the individuals who are going to do or currently do the job that needs to be done within the given departments. So on the credit side, you have all of the retinue of functionality associated with identifying and analyzing customers, creating credit lines, establishing the management of the portfolio of clients in such a way that you've always got an incrementally growing base of customers who are acquiring more of your value with a greater performance and greater profitability. That all rests on your shoulders. And to that end, we sit in on classes like this to identify what seems to work in different organizations across industries and countries that will help you get to your next level. And that level may be better understanding the job you do. If you are a core pillar of your organization, you like what you're doing and you're not really interested in going further, you want to be the best that you can be. These are the kinds of things that will help you further engage as a pillar. First and foremost, does everybody in whatever company they happen to be employed, has everybody seen the written credit policy of the company? Do they have one? Okay. That is, if you do not have one, my first suggestion to you is that you establish a credit policy and have it approved and implemented. The written credit policy is a basis for you to use in training and development. It's an information source for your salespeople. Interesting sales question. You deal with salespeople all the time, right? Yep. How many salespeople actually inform their customers about the terms of sale? The ones will tell you, oh, no problem, we do it all the time. And then when you get to the 60th day and you're trying to collect a 45-day invoice, the customer is saying, we never discussed that. It was like, I thought it was payment whenever I happened to get the money, Why are you banging me up today for money? Yeah. The reality is, communication remains the single strongest impediment to the development of a relationship between credit and sales. You can bridge that. We're going to talk a little bit about how to bridge and gauge further. And you do it through their pocketbook. Salespeople don't really care about a lot, but when you hold up a zloty, salespeople's eyes open right up because you're talking their language, right? So one of the objectives of today's discussion is demonstrating for you just how to make that engagement happen so that it's voluntary on their side. You target properly, you sit down, you do a review, and you carry it to the next level on the next customer and the next salesperson, and within the next 2 or 3 years, you find that credit people are in demand for dealing with customer issues because you're the ones that assure there is always credit line available for sale. No sale will be denied because there is no line available to the customer, because the communication is solid and everybody understands. The salespeople and the credit people understand. These are the impediments and this is how we hedge the risk. This is the margin. We can continue to sell increments of 10 million euro with this customer. And with every sale, every euro sale, we have a debilitating margin that will eventually take us to net negative margin on every sale. And as the sales increment and grow larger, the loss becomes bigger and you have a pattern for bankruptcy within, 2 years. If that's where your customer wants to go, if that's where your salesperson wants to go, you can show him how that works. But you do not sell below margin successfully in open markets. Okay, and we can tweak that as we're going through the process. For those of you who lack a credit policy, you can get into the ACCEE website, and there's a sample policy there. If you're really interested in doing it by industry, get Google search. trade credit policy by industry, you'll find 8 or 10 of them out there. You can't just cut and paste because it may be inappropriate for your organization or your industry. But the reality is, it's a place to go. If you take any of the pattern of courses that we've established for the trade, you'll find you're going to deal with that a lot because you actually engage with a policy. You take the policy, you go step by step through it, why you have it, why it needs to be there, you get it signed, and you get it distributed to the sales organization. Now you can tell the board of directors that you've done a due diligence, making sure everybody knows how we sell to clients. Now you're going to have to bend your mentality away from credit when you're talking about developing sales. But then your hat is risk management. How can I do the most that I can do with this client while assuring that I'm not taking incremental risk beyond that which is acceptable to the company? So again, this is training, this is development, education, and experience. Those of you who have it will add to it. Those of you who listen to what I'm saying, and basically this is Greek being delivered in Poland, then you need to have more research into the subject matter that we're talking about. We're on the process today, it's introducing the methodology. In future sessions, in future conferences, we'll get more into the details. The company has a strategic plan. Part of that strategic plan is obviously its sales plan. That sales plan is dependent upon you as capital of the firm, a resource to be managed in the interest of optimizing sales and profitability for the company. To the extent you understand, have all of you had an opportunity to review the strategic plan that your company has? Who doesn't care? Come on, be truthful. I don't give it. Understand, many people don't. The reality is, if you don't understand the direction your company's going, its objectives, you don't understand it, all of this flows back to you. They can't succeed unless you are optimizing your contribution to the function that you have and engaging with people around you to make sure that your group follows that strategic plan. Where would you find it? Where do you find a strategic plan? Think about it. What's the company's primary marketing tool? Partially the website, but more dramatically, what do your stakeholders look at?
It's like when we represent the results by the end of the year.
Annual report. The company's key marketing document. Strategic plan is outlined, what we've done, where we failed, what we're doing about it. You roll to the numbers, you're looking at the asset base, you look at the second most liquid asset, usually the largest in the queue, accounts receivable. Down looking at the reserves, you plot that across time. These are part of the education tools that you acquire in the process of becoming an analyst, a manager. You tier from the strategic plan all the way back through the company, and it comes back to you and your peers in the organization. Job descriptions. When you hire somebody to do a job, give them a written job description that includes an identification of what you expect of them, because your review on performance coming up in 90 days or at the end of the fiscal period or fiscal year will be a reflection of what they were chartered to do, what they did, and how they did it. Many companies don't have job descriptions. Go collect money. We'll give you training. So you dump them in the manager's lap and you say, train this person how to collect money. Okay. That usually yields very spotty results. It is an inefficient approach. If you have a policy and you have procedures and you have a job description, you've got 3 documents to give to a new person that basically gives them information about how best to get up to speed, which is what you need. Somebody at a good foundation level who's performing well. If they need a mentor, you slap a mentor on it and you've got somebody guiding them in the right direction so that you don't lose time and value while your human capital is rolling up to speed. And we'll talk about how that process fits in a bit. If you're in a management role, have you implemented succession planning as an ordinary concept of your business? Tomorrow you decide you get a job with IBM that's going to pay you $450,000 a year if you can be there next Monday. You're gone. You're history. You know, read my lips. Talk to you from California. I'm gone. If you don't leave with a successor in place, you do an injustice to the company who has provided you with income over the last period of time. And that will follow you, especially at senior levels. You'll find when HR organizations go to hire serious and significantly salaried people, that they are now dipping into many different areas in order to find out about the nature of this person. Primarily because if they're going to put you in front of customers and other stakeholders, they want to know that you're not going to embarrass them in that process. You can do much harm, but you can do much more of value, and that's what we're focusing on today. How do you get to that value proposition? Set achievement targets that are stretch but achievable for the people that are working for you, and set them for yourself. Feel that when you sense what's going on in this conference, there are subjects that are Greek to you, that you really wished you had a little more information about, and you ask somebody questions and they give you a cursory answer that satisfies your momentary indecision, but doesn't help you really understand the program. Nobody's stopping you from researching it further. You know, buy a book. The worst thing that you can do is to maintain a state of ignorance on any subject that you think has value. You know, 10 years ago, nobody thought credit people would be involved in risk until organizations started putting risk as a management feature of boards of director. And then some board members got this loop around his neck that makes him responsible for corporate risk. Now all of a sudden you're the most important person in the world. He doesn't have a clue about what's in the portfolio, and you own it. You may own it for 20 customers, you may own it for the entire group, you may own it for the organization. At any rate, there is an importance now to your understanding what constitutes risk. You know, giving somebody a credit line 2 times the existing line with no appreciable change in the characteristics that got them the first line, the lower line, is an element of risk that's added into the process that needs to be accounted for. If you give somebody twice the credit line, and I'm using that as, you pull these things out of the air, I could put names to these because I've gone through the exercise where credit managers will call up and say, hey, listen, I just did this. Anything you can give me in terms of a hit of what to do to hedge it? Because I think I just put us into a situation to incur a $4 million bad debt in 70 days. Or, gee, the guy's ordering stuff at a rate 10 times what he normally orders, and he's starting to delay payments. First 30 days delay, then 50 days delay, then 70 days delay. I said, it's been going on for 3 months? I said, yes. Yeah. Now you have the perfectly defined bankruptcy strategy. Accumulate product, keep your capital, go into bankruptcy, file an 11, throw off the debt, go forward with money and product, both of which you provided. Merry Christmas. So the decisions we make, understanding the risks in markets, are critical. And they all do come down to you. So make sure the achievement targets are maintained, they're reasonable, and they tier to the strategic plan. If your people are telling you you're going to sell X, all right, put the quarterly plan there. You have the portfolio of accounts. You have the credit line total. You have both ends of the equation. With the customers that are intended to buy the product, is there sufficient credit line to justify the selling potential that's there? I warrant when you sit with a salesperson and you go through this exercise, you're going to come up 20-30% short. The expectation is you're going to push it through. The company is expected to take that 20 or 30% extra risk because the salesman needs to meet his compensation bonus. So it's your responsibility, and we'll talk again in a few minutes about an executive credit committee whose responsibility it is, with the chief selling people, the chief marketing people, and the chief credit executive and his team, to communicate efficiently for all of the top level customers who make up generally 60 to 70% of your selling number, what the status is. You know, objective is this, credit lines are this, shortfall 40%. What do? You go into the portfolio and you select other clients to bring forward. Or you reevaluate the bigger customers and you secure it, you hedge it. You find a mechanism through guarantee. You put something in place to hedge the risk, or somebody at a senior level signs off on the incremental increase in credit line. A has to match B. It's like double entry bookkeeping, debits and credits. You want to sell, you have to have the credit lines. You don't have the credit lines, you've got two things that you can do. You can collect earlier and refresh existing lines at the same amount of risk. And again, these are all processes that can be taught. If you're a manager, this is what you should be generally informing your people about so that they can identify to you targets of opportunity. We're not moving quickly on this, but we're still going to get to the workshop piece at the end. Don't worry about it. This will be available to you to read after the fact. But the reality is, in terms of portfolios, when you have a given number of customers that are your key customers, and every organization does, when you run a pyramid, your key customers are at the top. 80-20, the Pareto rule applies. 80% of your business is done by 20% of your clients. All right. Make sure you have a handle and you communicate across the board on the status of those customers. If A does not equal the selling objectives of B, then at the meeting that you happen to be reviewing this account, senior CFOs, chief selling executives, put name on the authorization sheet to increase the line. That makes it justified, it makes it authorized, and it takes your content into consideration. So the reality for you at this stage is knowledge about the customer. The salesman might have information that would influence the company's ability, your willingness to increase credit lines. By the same token, they may have information that would enable you and cause you to forbear from increasing the line and maybe even consider reducing the line of credit. Particularly, we talk about bankruptcies. In the 80s, at the first financial crisis, junk bond crisis, you probably were in grammar school when that happened, but the reality is it caused unbelievable number of bankruptcies to come forward. I had 5,000 of them at one time. So I lived half my life in the law department and half in the organization, driving the business. And you find there is a pattern, and the pattern that I just disclosed to you, the 90-day pattern, increasing the demand for product, decreasing the amount paid, and they do it in a very nicely managed way. You see both happening at the same time. If you go further than 90-day without catching that, if you keep selling at the rate you're selling, if you forbear from collecting the amount you need to collect, and you don't cut them off at 90 days, shortly thereafter they'll file. You can tell they're technically insolvent if you review the financial statements. So again, the education that you give your people, that you develop for yourself, has to include your personal capacity to review these things and understand what's happening. And quite frankly, that's what they're paying you for. They pay you these exorbitant salaries to do exactly that. Yes. You have to inject levity in a credit discussion, right? In developing the functions, my heart goes out to shared service people, because it literally is a funnel into which all of the account crap flows, and they expect you to resolve it and move forward quickly to keep the cash flowing and applied so that the credit lines are available and the salespeople can sell. Nobody talks to you. There is no engagement or communication across the board to tell you what the problems are. They know what the problems are. That's why they gave them to you. The reality is, and again, we're back to the discussion of communication and engagement as part of the human resource process. Because to the extent that you are able to engage with sales and they trust you sufficiently to be able to give you the information you need, or to allow you, God forbid, to speak with the customers. And oftentimes when you've developed a loyalty with the customer, they'll tell you what the issue is. You know what, payables is delaying for a 15 or 30-day period because, quite frankly, we're having difficulty collecting from our customers. How many times have you heard that in your career? What do you do about it? You spend, if you can get management approval to go through the exercise, you can either create a fact sheet that sets a time series and a discipline up that shows your customer how to communicate with their customers and improve the collectability of the invoices that they're processing. Now, we used to do it in distribution where the margins are so low. I mean, if I was in a home office, there was a real crisis because they wanted me on the road with the customers driving the business. And you learn, when you develop a relationship with customers and you're a team member with sales, they share a lot of things with you. When there is a devaluation of a currency in a foreign country, this doesn't happen overnight. Well, it did once in Mexico, but that's a long time ago. The reality is that businesses know weeks in advance that the currency will be devalued. They know it. They can see it. They worry about it. They talk to you about it. And they don't do a bloody thing about it. When you explain to them, okay, your revenues are going to go from here to here. All right. So your money available to pay your bills and your employees is going from here to here. Get your force reduced in anticipation of that, and whatever selling environment you have at the point of devaluation, you merely continue off into the future. You have hedged the risk of the inability to do business at a time of difficulty. Now you've got a receivables issue that you're going to have to deal with them. Because believe me, if they paid 500 euro for a product today and the currency devaluation is 50%, and tomorrow the amount value for that product is 250, you've got some discussion to do with your customer. But as a distributor, we were very used to spreading it. Potential competitive inclusion of value from the manufacturers who would want to keep these customers in business. So, but again, your relationship with sales, your relationship with the customer transcends pure human capital development. It's a personal initiative to develop yourself and teach the folks that work for you the same skill set. I'll go back to the policy only one time, and that is to say, put one in place, run it up the flagpole to your CFO, get it approved so he can go to the board and say, we're covered. The risk of lack of discipline in this area has been resolved. Make sure your procedures, the work charts that you give to your people to function, tie to the policy, and then send it over to sales. So obviously you don't want to make an 80-page policy document, but you can give them a concisely worded corporate policy that explains to them, look, we don't sell net 30 because we're just nice people and it's the way things are done. Net 30 is what our marketing organization and our finance organization have come to in light of cost of debt, availability of capital, potential for development in the customer pool, competitive advantage, what the customers are used to. All of these things are blended in to create a net margin. And the net margin determines what you will have as a term of sale, because they'll churn the sales, they'll look at the recovery period, and that recovery period will determine how much short-term debt they need to have on hand. So the carrying cost of the unit of product or the service that you're providing has been measured, and it has been deemed optimal for the company to sell on net 30 terms. They can sell in the marketplace, they would be competitive, their products are high quality, it's inventoried and available. These things have to be shared so that sales knows it's not just an arbitrary number. It's not just an arbitrary number. It is a value that the company has deemed necessary for its survival and its expansion. So then you get into the discussions about, well, what if they paid net 32? Okay. It's still within policy. You adapt an administrative period, customer pays net 32, you don't impact the credit line. You work as much as possible to assure that 32 is the number. We'll talk in a minute about how that rolls over on the AR side for a strategy of optimizing the DSO and collections. Do you have internal training programs specifically designed so that new people in your organization receive corporate training? This is who we are, this is what we do, this is our competitive environment, and you have 1/2 day for the next 2 weeks, every other day, and we're going to take you through the systems piece. They have to have some kind of introduction to how your business functions and how they're to relate. On the collection side specifically, where they're following up with administrative components of customers, there has to be some kind of training that is documented and approved and done consistently. The objective of that training is to create a foundation. When everybody in your organization is at a common foundation, then you start to see who is available for development, who can expand your opportunity to do more, potentially, to do it better, in an environment where you're trying to fix issues. The more experience they have, the more training they've had, the more educated they are, the better adapted they are to sitting in a meeting with other people from your organization to resolve issues that are prevalent in the system. And these quality units are very successful. If you have billing issues, we're going to talk about, probably more than you would like, the impact of transactions that remain detached, unattended in the accounts receivable pool, what the results of that could be, and what the requirements are in order to resolve it. You have to have business processes that are communicated between organizations. So your billing department, if your billing department has an issue and you're truncating the last number on a customer number, all that information is going to flow through and dump into your accounts receivable base. Given actions that occur, transactions that occur after the fact. So they roll along for 2 weeks and this has occurred. After 2 weeks, somebody notices it and it makes the system adjustment and your customer number goes back to normal. All right, now you're going to have 2 series of customer numbers in that customer account that will never match up to the transactions that refer to the previous number, because there's no mechanism. Unless you see it and you raise the concern, you sit with the billing department, you identify the resources and the mechanism necessary to fix it. And all of this lies on your shoulders. Don't take this too seriously. But it's all your responsibility if you want to succeed. The difficulties that many organizations have are self-inflicted. They don't communicate amongst themselves. They don't train different groups within the organization to cross-function, so that you're never at a loss at a time when there's a rush or a major push. You're at a loss. People work late. They get tired. They make mistakes. It just creates a human resource nightmare. So again, with the associates that you bring on board, you want everybody in the organization to have at least a basic foundation knowledge, a skill set which you hire in or you provide, and knowledge of how the system operates in your company, as well as the IT that supports it. So if everybody is on the same page, now you've got something to push an organization forward. You start looking for high potential, high performance people. We'll go quickly in a minute to group analysis. But the high potential, high performance person is your angel and your devil in one person. They tend to be very focused. Many of them focused on themselves, their career. and their potential for expansion, development, power. Okay. The reality is, it's often very desirable to have these people in your organization. They're catalysts. They're not afraid to step up and introduce an idea. All right. You have to mitigate the impact of that on the other people in the organization that are rolling their eyes and going, oh crap, another brainy idea from this person. But the reality is, without that HP person, you could very well just continue churning day after day after day. Now, the distaff side of that is that you must provide that HP person with a mechanism to satisfy that need for more. I need more information. I want to know more about how these things work. Yeah, those of you who have them know what I'm talking about. They say, oh yeah, boy, do we know that. The reality is, if you had 7 slots and 7 high performance, high potential people, you would be in the insane asylum. They would be impossible to manage because the conflict generated by multiple people with the same objective in a limited confined space is tragedy for the group. So we're going to talk, in a second, we'll talk a little bit about how to mitigate that. Everybody would like to have competent people, and you can build those. And having a couple of idea persons, very suitable for you to grow your business and develop. As a matter of fact, if you are looking at quality analysis, problems with billing that you would like to have analyzed and spread and structured for solution, these are the people that you would want to put at the head of that. It gives them something to do. They have something in their hands. They're working every minute. It looks good. It goes into the resume. The potential for promotion is there, right? Okay, so that's how you deal with this. But when you manage it and you guide it in the right direction, your entire organization benefits from it. Management potential, you see it all the time with new people coming into an organization. Watch the person that other people go to for answers. That's your future manager. Not necessarily your leader, your future manager. There is a difference between management and leadership. Management follows a guideline that has been pre-established for a particular function. Leadership steps beyond that to review the environment, project what values have a potential in that environment, and then guides an organization. Recommendation, suggestion, introduction, guides it into the next level. Two entirely different things, but both necessary for the organization to prevail. I'm always surprised at how fast this class goes. Do you know what your chain of command is in terms of authorization for exception? Go, that's wonderful. I've been in meetings where people have said, well, not really, I just asked Joe and he knows. He's the management potential guy. But the reality is, in order to create a fluid flow of operation, one of the most critical events is, what do I invoke? What path do I take when the cogs stop? I've got an order going through for $14 billion to Bosnia. And it's cooking, man. The inventory's prepared. We're getting ready to move it down the line. They're picking stuff together, and all of a sudden, bang, the wheels stop. Where do you go for a resolution? What's the problem? Why has it stopped? The credit hasn't been arranged. It's a quasi-government organization, and the key piece has not been approved. Okay, that size of an order should fly right up that flagpole almost immediately to, I would suspect, the CFO. All right, CFO's not there. What's fallback position? What 2 or 3 other executives in the organization consolidated can give you the approval? And do you have the answers to the questions they're going to ask? All right, if the answer is no to either of those, start thinking now. Put that process in place. And again, this is human capital development that you establish for yourself, but then you become the go-to person. And go-to persons are very desirable in organizations. And by the way, if your organization doesn't respect that, There are plenty of organizations that will, believe me, for a very nice premium. It's not like the old days. You know, you don't clear out the credit department or the collection department because we've got an expense problem, you know? They put the right people in the right jobs and everything will work. Best practice is a really interesting term. I've been debating that term for years. There can only be best practice in an environment whose characteristics emulate yours. Other than that, it's the same crapshoot everybody else is using, but somebody just hasn't written a book about it yet. The reality is the best practice for you is the practice that results in your achievement of your strategic plan as it is rolled down to your realm of responsibility. All right. What's your turnaround for a new order solution to market? 2 hours or 4 days? The difference is the loss of a minimum of 4 days selling potential. Because if you can't find out in the first 2 hours whether it's a single purchase transaction and you're just approving an order, never done business with this person before, where do they reside? Well, there's a sales office in Miami, Florida, but the guy resides in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Okay, you think you want to maybe know more information about that client? He sent us financials. Great. They scan them, they send the financials to you. You get an 8.5 by 11 page with numbers written on it. No trend analysis. Just very basic, sales were this, debt is this, real property, 0, cash in bank, 400. This is the financial statement, all right? And it's, by the way, and it has 2 certifications on it. It has a seal of approval with a very highly titled person from a non-existent organization, and that's what they're using. And by the way, it's one of 3 financial statements. It's called the Caixa Doi. One goes to his wife, the other goes to his girlfriend, the third one goes to the bank. I mean, you get the one that goes to the bank usually, and it's understated enormously on the sales side. But the reality is, you've got to make a decision. Does that fly? Okay. You don't make a call to the salesperson to get additional information. He's been doing business with that person. He's been trying to develop him as a customer. He knows things you'll never be able to find out, which makes a 500 euro deal very reasonable. And then you measure the repayment period on it, and if he makes it, you give him another 500. And you keep doing that until you're comfortable that his pattern of performance is consistent and you've been able to make a relationship. You don't care to know when things are going well. You care to know when something goes wrong, because that's what impedes your ability to convert your invoice to cash. Issues that will ordinarily require additional education, additional training in order for you to perform at your consistent level or at your desirable ultimate level. And that is, what kind of technology enhancements are being made in your company? How do they affect you? And what do you need to know? Both to operate personally and to guide people who are working for you. All right, that's additional education and training the company should provide. You probably won't have to go out and seek it. It's probably going to be right there for you. The research and resolution of issues is purely on your plate. How long it takes you to identify an issue and to resolve it is within your realm of development. You know, have you enough knowledge in the market, in the culture? If you're resident here in Krakow and you're selling into fairly remote places in Central and Latin America, or Thailand, Vietnam, China, if you're lucky, Singapore. But the reality is there are aspects of those environments economically, financially, socially, that impact your ability to keep your portfolio clean. If you have the Singapore portfolio, you need to train up on how business operates in Cambodia, in Singapore, in Thailand, in whatever country that you have it. They operate differently. But believe me, the one thing that you can take to the bank, in your major customer pool, you create a relationship that includes the customer. And to the extent you team with sales to develop that customer, you always stand a better chance of developing that customer further with a competitive advantage. Because if your competitors are not doing it, you have the opportunity to sell successively more product, risk managed better because of the information flow that you have. We'll talk in a few minutes about the issue of reconciliation. It's one of my favorite subjects. It doesn't involve marital situations, so you don't have to worry about it. This is purely business. Policy and procedure adjustments. Again, if you don't have a policy, you don't have to worry about adjustment. You need to create it. Right now, tout suite, get it in writing, run it up the flagpole, let them criticize it and send it back down. But in the end, you'll have a written document that you can base the foundation of training for your people. It's nice to know what you're supposed to be involved with in terms of guidelines. Procedures the same way. Training of associates. Wow. Interestingly enough, if your company has internal training about your company that it has in place, ordinarily that's sufficient to get them on board. For your purposes, they need to be specifically oriented towards those pieces of credit, of collection, of risk management that enable them to recognize certain changes, certain alternative events that would cause you to escalate, cause them to take the file to you. This guy stopped paying 2 months ago and I got an order. What do I do? That's an easy one. But you have to guide them to understand, yes, this was good that you brought it to me, but in the future, here's what your challenge is. Okay, this is a bad series of events that could become worse. Find out from the customer what the issue is. Well, you build the product and I didn't get it for another 45 days. So I attached my trade terms on top of that, and it's quite frankly not due for another 15 days. Okay, customer service, mark the file, orientation, confirm it with the sales guy, and move forward. You've treated the customer with respect. Those kinds of events and training occur live and real time, but you have to train people associated with your group to recognize when they need to escalate it and what they need to do when they do. All right. Education is an interesting component because it's very personal. Maybe you're in an organization that doesn't really want to pay for your education. You have to determine what value that education is to you. If you can't monetize the education that you're paying for, then you need to look at an alternative path. That's why MBA schools today are in such crisis, because the kids coming out of MBA organizations are doing well on Wall Street. And that's because these Wall Street companies take them in and put them through 2 years of internal study, which is essentially a PhD in finance and statistics in what they want you to do. All right, that is what? The 0.025 segment of the students that are graduating. What happens to the others? They get into organizations with expectation. Well, I have an MBA, so I'm going to go work for this company. They're going to make me a vice president. Well, of course, if they go to a bank, everybody's a vice president. But the reality is a person of authority in the trade usually takes either a history of performance at that level or designated recognition of responsibility that would allow them to easily step into the role, and you get the promotion or you get the nomination at that level right from the start. But the reality is, most of these MBA students have great book learning. I mean, I've had students come out of there that could cite chapter and verse, all 450 pages of my text. Could not apply a concept to save their lives. So what kind of reference do you give that kind of person who is going to a company that you value? So you do all of the, the dancing techniques, right? Well, the student did excellent in my class, contributed regularly, the papers were excellent. You don't put anything in there about an operational aspect. Then I get the phone call. Pat, I got your recommendation in front of me. Is this guy reasonable to hire for this position? And I said, well, do you have a subordinate position that will give him time to ramp up? 6 months, 9 months, do you have that much time? Yeah, I got that much time. Then this kid can do it. He's smart, he's motivated, he'll work hard, he'll get you where you need to go, and he's got the fundamentals. But he does not have the operational experience that the position would call for. All right. Those are the kinds of things you need to be considering. What pieces are you missing? What do you want to be when you grow up? I mean, when you're 70 years old and you're standing in front of a bunch of people, what will you have done that gives you the most value in memory, the most ability to develop going forward? If you have achieved what you wanted to achieve, it's wonderful. You have a good sense that you've contributed something to global economies. The flip side is no strategy, no plan. You don't know what you're missing. Days go by, months go by, years go by. You get to be 40, 45. The next thing you're looking at, gee, I'm almost 50. I got to start looking at retiring. Your mind starts to ramp down. Involuntarily, your mind starts to ramp down unless you have achieved the position you wanted to have and you're excited about it. You're developing, you're expanding, and you're still growing. All right, so again, you control these things. And there are cost-effective ways of doing everything that you want to do. You just have to do the research and go with it. And sometimes it means you change company. The bottom line is credit is not only 90% of world trade, it is a primary driver of competitive advantage. You are the company's factor which promotes the most competitive advantage. Over and above product quality, over and above price, over and above marketing promotion, over and above placement and inventory and distribution of product. It's you, because every element that impedes the profitable promotion of the organization can be identified and resolved by you. Not alone, perhaps engaged with others, but the human capital aspect that we're talking about is you. We take it right down to the unitary level. What do you want to be when you grow up? You want to be the chief financial officer? You start here, go someplace else. You've got a lot of pieces that you have to add to your skill set. You want to be a credit executive for a multinational corporation. All right. What industry mix would be optimal for you to have in order for you to become suitable for advancement into that position? Do you need to work for a larger company for 5 years and a much larger company for another 5 years before aspiring to a financial or a senior financial role in a global corporation? Set the strategy, bring in the tools. I did my MBA at 50 years old. It was a nightmare for my professors. Most of them had never been in an operation environment. And I had more fun in that program than I think I've ever had in school in my lifetime. But it demonstrated to the professors that they needed to integrate operational aspects of real business into the classroom. And they did. Now the kids are coming out of the university and they actually understand what a receivable is. You know, other than that line of print in the financial statement, which they measure 75 different ways, but never achieve a conclusion. You know, other than that, there are real customers. There is a credit line that represents selling that, if properly refreshed in a speedier way, can actually drive more sales for the same amount of risk. You control all this. I mean, you got to go home tonight and say, my God, I own the universe. All I have to do is execute. This is your first step. I mean, I'm happy to have you with me here because we're going to have some fun with this. It'll become fun soon, I promise. Okay, simple symbol for group organization. All right, ideally, think of your department, regardless of the number of people you have. Within your department, you have core individuals that I refer to as pillars. They are people who love the job they do, would not leave it for all the world, do it well, take very few sick days, generally are not complicated in any way. You give them an assignment, they do the assignment, they're happy about it, it's extra work, they could care less. It's more knowledge on their part. They don't want to work more than 8 hours a day, and they don't want to work more than 5 days a week, because they have a life outside of the organization. But when they walk through that door, they are your people. They're the pillars. They stay there, and regardless of what happens around them or on top of them with the management, that department will continue to perform better than adequately in time of crisis because they're there. All right. Inject into that the next level of catalyst, and we come back to our friends, the high performance, high potential people. You know, they're manic. Gen Ys are great for this. Wow, I had an idea. I was sleeping last night for 15 minutes, and I had an idea, and I woke up and I wrote it down. Then I came into the office an hour early, and I drafted it out. What do you think? Give me an answer now. It's 17 pages. Give me an answer now. Those are your high potential, high performance people. Now, denigrate them at your peril, because if these people stop thinking, you're in trouble, because that's what keeps the organization moving ahead. We talked about the quality groups and how a combined effort by different resources, informed, operationally interested effort will move something forward. These are the guys that, if we were to, these guys over here that are dealing with Latin America, if we put somebody in there that actually spoke Spanish, it might really help them convert that capital faster. I go to Czech Republic, or Poland, ask me to collect a bill in Poland. Yet. And I'm a fairly experienced executive. One would think my mere presence, like Donald, my mere presence should make things roll out in front of me. Scheiße. However, these high performance people must have bounds. They must have an access to the manager who is going to take what they say, assimilate it, and then distribute it to the group in a way that either improves the environment or gives the high performance, high potential person an alternative pathway to take for satisfaction. All right. As I told you before, if you have these 6 slots, all high potential, high performance people, you are dead meat as a manager. The potential is very much like the foundation of a building. Your manager can come in, can introduce new ideas, new concepts. That's what management people do. Well, this would work better if we tried that, or this would work better if we did that. Oh, by the way, I've got this relationship with sales. I want to bring those people in here, and I want to create that relationship for the rest of my team. Okay? He does a great job. She does a great job. 2 years later, vice presidency opens up. They're gone. What happens to the group when the manager goes into that environment? Nothing. It keeps crunching on. It keeps doing the job because the pillars are there, and you've got still a series of high potential people to measure what's happening, how it's happening, and what potentially could be done in order to improve it. They're generally great people to do engagement because they're extroverted. They don't mind going up to talk to people who are ordinarily offended by the fact that they have to talk to a credit person. Hide their face and go in the back room and make sure nobody sees them talk to the credit people. But the reality is the group persists at a high level of performance. So think about how your organizations are developed now and where these characteristics exist. If you don't give these HP people a potential for outletting the ideas, the projects that they've done and presented to you, they will leave. They'll have no alternative. They may just go to another department or organization that values what it is they do. But the reality is they're gone. They need to feel like they're home. You respect them, you give them, you defer to them when you can. Sometimes it's very strange what they find as reinforcement. Sometimes it's merely you shake somebody's hand or you call them into a meeting and you discuss their ideas with the people in the group and you award them the recognition that, well, this is Paul's idea. He put it together. He structured it. He ran the numbers. This works very nicely. We'd like to try it here. Which one of you would like to work with him as a resource to make this happen? Now, everybody's hearing good news. So again, your value as a manager, your value as a leader increases to the extent the development of your people accelerates. All of this gets attributed to you. And that's where promotions come from. Promotions come better when you develop sales. Okay, now don't fear. The entire presentation in all of its expanse will be up on the website for people who have attended the conference, and you'll be able to get this, draw it down, and deal with it on your own. If you copy it, it's copyright infringement. But other than that, feel free to read it, enjoy it, and assimilate it. Common problem for people in our profession emanates in the simplest places. Who can tell me what this is? It's an age trial balance, right? What do we know about age trial balances?
They don't represent reality of your payment term. They represent reality of your ERP system.
What characteristic? Well, first of all, where do these numbers come from? What is this? If I take this month 3 total balance, what does that number represent? From where?
From the receivables.
It is the sum total of the detritus that is dumped into the accounts receivable base and netted to form an outstanding trial balance at the end of a fiscal period. And we've been using it for hundreds of years. Fibonacci was using it. I mean, everybody was using it. The reality is that when you look at the flow, first of all, since this is a report that identifies the fiscal period, the currency in euro millions, month 1, month 2, month 3, so that's a very good encapsulation of a fiscal period. So with 3 points in time measured, what do we have? Trends. The best of all possible world. Better than a comparison, a trend. And when you're into analysis, it's something you want to keep in your mind. You want to see a trend. You want to see 3 points in time so that you can measure real improvement, not just a transition from A to B, but a continuity of a trend. So if it's trending positive, you want to be able to see it across a 3 point. All right, one thing. Second, these numbers are net. You'll hear me say it 4 or 5 more times before we get to the actual solution, because therein lies a problem that you can fix. Now, I promise everybody that attends any of my workshops that they will have at least one major piece of information that enables them to go back to their company and immediately add value to the operation. And in this case, you're talking reputational capital, you're talking cost of capital, you're talking competitive advantage, stakeholder value perceived, in one simple little term. All right. In this particular case, let's just go to the next chart. Let's take it down to the bottom line. So these are the ending balances at the end of each month within the fiscal period being analyzed. All right, look at the trend line. What's in current? Plus the amounts billed but not due. That's right. What's in the 1 to 30?
In this case, it looks like late payments.
Well, overdue or, remember when we talk about credit terms, net 30? How many people pay you net 30? How many people pay you net 31 or net 32 or even net 33? And there's never an issue there, because we accept a certain amount of administrivia that is antecedent to the fact that it's billed and received and approved and the quality is inspected and approved, cut. The check is cut and sent to you. And of course today with electronic payments, they get very much closer to the front end. So this is a 30-day period. It's a bucket. If it falls into the bucket in the first 4 days, it's a different unit of currency than that which falls in the last 3 days of the month. But that's research and analysis beyond today's discussion. Today we're merely looking at the flow. So moving across the months, current flows to 1 to 30, which flows to 31 to 60. So is there an erosion, a reduction in the values associated with those areas of the receivable? So 4615.9 to 21, reduced. 25 to 18 to 0.5. That's nice. We like that. 3.6 to 0.7 to something else. Presumption is whatever problems it encounters in the early part of the receivable on a net basis is being remediated because the number is going down. 3.6, 1.8, 2.1 flat, 1.4, 0.7, 0.5 reduced. So something is working in that window. With the presumption being in time, maybe 2 or 3 quarters, those numbers go away because everything's been resolved. I mean, you get to 0.5. I mean, good Lord, how much better can it get? All right? Oh, ye of little faith. There's the flow we just discussed. It's the trend that we would expect when we're evaluating a customer. When you're doing a new customer evaluation to assign a credit line, you want to know these things. How fast can they address past due receivables? And is it an amount that is acceptable to our perception of the company's value? And when you add to that the reserve for bad debt that's identified in the financial statements, you get a pretty good understanding of the fact that they're either managing or not managing their business. So all of this helps. Whoa. There's always a credit guy that's going to throw crap in the game. That's usually me. This is the 3rd month of the fiscal period, net. This is a request made to the accounting organization for a detailed trial balance. And what this does, it breaks the transactions out according to whether they are a debit item or whether they are a credit item and where they fall from an aged standpoint within this particular portfolio. All right. Now, does the term material misstatement of an asset come to mind when you're thinking about, go right to the over 90 category and take a look at those numbers. 14 million euro resident in the over 90. Remember, the number is 0.5 net. So the analysts that are looking at it, your board members that are looking at credit performance on the trade receivables have been seeing 0.5, 1.2, 0.5, and they're, oh wow, man, these guys really have their act together. Okay? So you've got 14 million in debits and another 13 million in credits unattached to the invoices. All right, what would be, given a company of reasonable operating capacity, wanting to bury this as quickly as possible, what would be the solution proposed? Write it off. Get it off the balance sheet. Forgetting that, the credits that were issued and are due, the debit adjustments that were provided, the customer indicating a change in their condition, invoicing condition, still remains outstanding in the market. So you've got 13 million in credits that if you wash out, okay, you net it, 14 debit, 13 credit, $1 million hit? I'm a believer, make that happen. And tomorrow, 13 million worth of customers are going to come to you and say, here's my credit document, I want it applied against the following invoices at the front end. You take a $26 million hit and a tremendous amount of embarrassment as you sit in front of the board of directors explaining what idiot chose to write off. Okay? Now, I say that because it gives rise to a much different problem that we don't ordinarily understand. It is our job to fix the problem, right? It means somebody has to touch every transaction. So they don't touch $237 million worth of transactions. They touch 295 million. This is an absolute value. It's just the total of the numbers from the top down. It adds into it the complexity associated with these transactions. So your fix is a much more substantive problem than would first be perceived. This can't be resolved properly with a write-off of the transactions. You can't just write off the back end of this. First of all, the problems persist. They may have been somewhat relieved by age. Somebody searched them out and fixed them one at a time. But there's a pool. Was ist das? Well, you know what? Not to worry. You've seen the numbers, so the rest of this is fairly uncomplicated, and we can basically just use the numbers. Okay, so you've got a $295 million nut, and then you've got 14 million in debit items and 13 million in credit items, with a few other items thrown in terms of transactions. But the reality is you need to fix it. All right, now, how do you ordinarily structure a solution with an order of magnitude that could give the impression that you have materially misstated your financial records? The most common answer to that is with great sensitivity. It means you have to structure a solution. So you go to the billing department and you say, I want a list by type of transaction. I want the transaction type, and I want the customer name and the customer number and the outstanding amount for that transaction, and I want it at the unitary level for 295 million items. Now, if it's an invoice recently billed, you can peel that out of the conversation in order to resolve this problem, because it is not yet a problem. And if you resolve the issues, you can go back and fix those before they get to be an aged receivable of any consequence. All right. All right, good. Okay, so we come to a base of 50 million in items that have to be addressed. How do you structure it? You take the output from the transaction analysis, so you know at the detail level how much money is involved. You structure a solution. Remember how business works? First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, right? 1, 2, 3. Or actually within a quarter. First month, second month, third month. In the fourth quarter, you've maximized sales. So those are being billed in the first of the next month, right? You then have collection activity that's accelerated in the third month of a fiscal quarter. So you've got positive sales, positive collections, DSO drops like a rock. It's the way the formula works. All right, this is good. Now, you've identified there's a 50 million euro hole that's going to be injected into your accounts receivable balance if you don't do something about it. All right, so the solution would be similar to the strategy you use for sales within a quarter. In the first month, you have the analysis from accounting. You go through the exercise of plotting what the problems are, what root cause resulted in that problem occurring on a continuing basis. All right? In the second month of the quarter, from the results of that analysis, you create a strategy to deal with the 14 plus and the 13 minus discrepancy. If you take all of the unapplied credits off the books at the same time, your over 90 balance goes from 0.5 to 14.5. How'd you like to be the board member analyzing the receivables and saying, this was 0.5 last month, it's 14.5 now. What the hell are you guys doing? Get the credit manager in here. Let's have a discussion of what's going on. So, obviously, the recommended solution would not include that kind of effort. What it might include is a combination of solutions for the debit side and the credit side in a fairly simultaneous way across months, spanning perhaps not only this quarter, but the next quarter. And in fact, the balance of the receivable, because you're manipulating, financial manipulation is not new to the market, right? You are managing the solution to the problem in such a way that you address 1/3 of the debits and resolve them against the invoices. You resolve 1/3 of the credits, resolve them against the invoices. The net effect, 0. You do it second month, you do it into the third month, so that when you get into, if this is Q1, by the time you hit the end of Q2, you're still in your period where you're optimizing sales and you're maximizing the collections. So your DSO is going to take a tank. The fact that you've resolved the problem inherent within the accounts receivable base has enabled you to mitigate to the world the possible effect of being accused of a material misstatement of the asset. That would be the most difficult to argue, because it would tend to make you agree that you allowed risk in the portfolio and you didn't have the measures in place to identify it and avoid it. And today, board of directors are all about risk management. I mean, they have been hammered because of the effect of the companies that have gone into bankruptcy, too numerous to name, Enron and all of the banking squabbles. It's what Basel III is all about. Basel II, Basel III is all about working this angle for banks. So the perception is the trade, corporations need to understand that it's their responsibility to carry forward with risk mitigation. It means identifying it and resolving it. The people that are making decisions in behalf of your creditors, so the banks, look at these numbers. So if the numbers do not materially change across 2 fiscal periods, no flags are raised, no issues are there. If something goes wrong with this process, the issue of materiality comes up. This is too big a number to allow to proceed. This is probably the best hint I have ever given to any audience anywhere in the world, and it operates across all markets. Good Lord, even the Chinese loved it. So you got to know it's got magic to it. But the reality is, it is generally not something that people look at. And I'm explaining to you that in order for you to provide real service to your company, pull down the detailed ATB. Look at the structure of the intermittent processes that have not been applied against the invoices. Then, when you structure the solution, you engage with the billing department, you engage with the sales department, you identify the root cause for each of these discrepancies, and the first thing you do is you fix it. The second thing you do is you roll back up to the billed invoices to determine what of them has been impacted, has been infected by the issue. And that project will make your name in that company, because if that ever got out, the reputation would be soiled. In addition, the stakeholders that are providing you maybe with priority service on the supply side would have second thoughts. If this goes on elsewhere in the company, they could go out of business. I don't want to commit 40% or 50% of my inventory to these guys if that's a potential for happening. So either the price goes up on your inbound, or they take a lot of the business over to your competitors. Either way, you lose. But the reality here is, how do you get to the point where you can engage this kind of analysis on your own? And it's a fairly simple exercise of getting all the training that your company can give you on the processes that are used in-house, then setting up your own education scheme that tiers to what you would like to be conversant with. If it's analysis, if it's cultural anomalies in difficult countries that are falling into your portfolio, structure a solution, go out and execute it. You don't need people to drive you in the direction of education. You merely need to be personally motivated to do that. I like education. I've always liked it. When I had a senior vice president position as a corporate officer in a distribution company, I still taught. I taught weekends at university. I just like to teach. The issue now is when I teach, I try to put value in a small package and send you on your way so that you can go out and execute. You have success in one area, the probability is you'll have a taste for success, you'll want more, you have the avenue to do that. To wrap up, one of the things that I spent the last year doing was designing for ACCEE, a 3-tier education program supported by a single text that applies to all 3 of them. It's 40% of the content. So if you never want to take a test for any certification or any course, and you want information associated with up to 40% of what's taught, get the book, read the book, go forward and do what's in the book. I mean, it is operationally oriented. This is not a novel. You will not take this, go lay in bed at night with a hot toddy and enjoy yourself. This is beef. You get into it and it forces you to think in the first part, domestically, nationally. How do you do the job you do? How can you do it better? And what elements you need to include. Second part, on the export side, when you begin to interface more regularly with other nationalities, with other legal systems, with other customs and courtesies that relate to your business growth. And the third part is clearly global. When you're talking about, for instance, the world's biggest challenge, I would like to do business with China. In 2014 I came back from 10 years engaged through the government teaching trade, credit, risk management to the Chinese, who actually don't have a vocabulary word for credit. I mean, it is not in their culture. Business happens in China differently than it happens here. We've got, I think I've got 4 articles already in the accelerator about China. So if you're engaged in collecting anything from the People's Republic, get into the articles, read it. If you have questions, send an email forward. I mean, that's what we're here for. The objective is to raise the level of superior performance, of competitive advantage in Central and Eastern Europe. And it is happening already. The quality that we're offering you this year is better than the quality we've ever offered you in the past. The dimensions are more intense, yet more resourceful, more capable of being taken into your office environment. So all you have to be is motivated enough to pick it up, look at your environment, try to survey how it applies to your environment, and take it forward. Promotions will follow if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking to get a job in a different company, these things will follow with you. Remember, you take the knowledge and the experience with you. Everybody looks brain dead. Oh my God, is it 4:45 yet? It is very close. 5 minutes. Well, my computer basically identified where we ended this point. The end of the process is basically an overview of the fact that this is not your traditional human resource management course. And what I want to do is to keep you awake for at least an hour. So I opted in favor of an operational orientation. What did I go through building an organization from scratch? You'll get that opportunity someday. Somebody will approach you with a stack of resumes and say, go build a 30-man operation for $250 million worth of business, and it needs to be in place in 90 days. All right. That teaches you a lot very quickly. Yeah, you make a lot of decisions that end in partial or complete failure. You learn from it and you move forward. Remember this. You're going to make 100 decisions today. And for the ordinary person, not one of those decisions will result in loss of life. That's a whole different decision factor. Okay, but in our world, if you don't make decisions, you will never become a leader. Because you can't become a leader until you have had a series of failures leading to your ability to perceive those events that result in failure. And then you can build an organization with people that can manage according to your directives and move forward. So don't be afraid to make a decision. Be afraid to fail to make a decision at an opportune time. Present it, argue it, debate it, assimilate it engage with other departments, have the discussion. See where you're wrong. See where they could be improved. integrate the two. Move forward. You'll be a superstar in 6 months. Maybe 9 if you're slow. Any questions?
Too many.
Well, then you can either catch me, I'll be upstairs over the next couple of days, or send me an email. I've got some business cards with the ACCE email address. I'm happy to have you send me an email there. I'll collect it and respond to you at your locations.
So thank you very much for attending today's master classes. This is the end of the program for today. Before we leave, there were many important noticed mention. Accelerator, for those who are new in this community, this is the newsletter of ACCE you can find on their webpage. Pat was also mentioning about the book. The book will be available. We got, unfortunately, only few copies for the sales tomorrow. On the meeting room, you've been attending first classes. There will be our technology vendors as well ACC stand for tomorrow and Friday. So we urge you, whomever is really interested, first come, first served. And hopefully you enjoyed the sessions. This is a regular event, not only the conference, but as well the master classes. There will be more in Krakow, there are more in Czech Republic, Romania, all other countries where ACC is basically connected. So we will value your feedback once you share through the either app, verbally. Please share the interest. We've seen in the first classes what are the topics you are interested in. So we will follow up and try to bring you more experts from the industry and operation to help you through the master classes. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Appraisal. The app, Inventory. Go in, you get a chance to can people, and they don't know who you are, so it's wonderful. Just speak your mind. Enjoy yourself. Have a good conference.